All right. Good evening. We are so excited for our guest speaker tonight. We'd like to welcome Dejah Mulipola that has come to speak to us tonight. Dejah is super awesome. She's currently a professional athlete playing for Athletes Unlimited. Where you won the all around in 2022, right? That's a pretty neat achievement to have done. She played her college ball at Arizona. She's a catcher. And has played with Team USA a couple of times now, including in the 2020 Olympics where she won a silver medal. And then most recently, last week, she got back from the Pan Am Games down in Chile where she played with Team USA and they won the gold medal. So fresh off a really big win, a really big deal. Really cool to have her here tonight with us. And she's going to go ahead and take it away and introduce yourself and share some of your story.
Yeah, thank you, coaches, first of all, for having me. And thank you to Fearless Fast Pitch for you all being here tonight. Or if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. But like she said, my name is Dejah Mulipola. I'm originally from Garden Grove, California, currently in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I just finished my third professional season with Athletes Unlimited. And like Coach Kara said, I was a champion in 22. My best friend, Odyssey Alexander, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, just won this past year. So that's amazing. I attended the University of Arizona, where I got my degree in Care, Health, and Society, which is pretty much public health, if you were a little confused there. I was a two-time All-American there, Pac-12 champion. We went to the College World Series 2 times, never won it, unfortunately, but we were there. So nonetheless, and then I was a 2-time Johnny Bench Catcher of the Year. Sorry if I'm looking down, I'm reading the accolades. Sometimes, I don't even remember some of these things because it's just a blur, but I'm excited to share my story with you guys tonight because although there's all these amazing accolades, I think, the journey of it all helps you appreciate these accolades a lot more. So I played for the Orange County Batbusters. We'll go back in time. I played for the Orange County Batbusters under Mike Stith and Mark Campbell as my travel organization. Attended Pacifica High School with that same coach, Mark Campbell, who I consider my second dad. And ultimately, that's how I ended up at the University of Arizona playing for Coach Candrea. And what a dream that was for me to play for such a legendary coach. And I've been very fortunate my whole entire life to play for amazing coaches, which I wouldn't be the player that I am today or even half of the person, if I wasn't learning from those amazing people. And I was always told I could never play for female coaches because I had always grown up under male coaches. And, a lot of the time I spent my childhood with my dad. And so I grew up with 2 brothers as well. And I was always training around the boys. I was very tomboyish and I always wanted to get dirty and play in the dirt. And so they were scared that I wouldn't be able to respond as well under a female coach. But I think playing under Coach Candrea was the absolute dream for me. And so if you guys ever get that opportunity to go to college and play for an amazing coach, I highly, highly recommend you guys work hard and chase that dream because it's changed my life forever. And it's allowed me to play for even Team USA and have amazing opportunities such as that. Just having, somebody like Coach Candrea in my corner to be able to vouch for me and, learn from and help me get those opportunities. So if you have a dream to play Division I college ball or even any college ball under any division, I highly encourage y'all to chase that dream. But as I said, I've played for Team USA since 2017, which was my freshman year in college. I've been on pretty much every roster from the junior team to the B team to the Japan All-Star roster team to now the women's team, and a few years ago, the Olympic team. So like I said, amazing opportunities have come my way. And although I have these amazing accolades, I have to tell my story and share a little bit about, the journey it's been to get there, because I know a lot of the time we just see these accolades and we don't know what actually went on behind the scenes for us to get there. So let's start there. I am one of 6. I have 5 other siblings, 3 girls, 3 boys in my family. I'm the second oldest. I grew up with separated parents. So life was kind of chaotic with a lot of siblings and, separated parents, and being the oldest female, I matured very fast. And growing up with 2 brothers, my brother and my stepbrother, they were always told, you know, you guys can go to the NFL, you guys have these big male sport dreams. And me not knowing too much about pro softball at such a young age, I didn't know, you know, what was my goal? What was I chasing? I wasn't too familiar with college softball at the age of 8. And so that was a venture in its own. Was, you know, these boys have the dream of going to the NFL or going to the MLB or whatever they wanted to do. What was I chasing? And so I competed with the boys nonetheless. And, you know, I was always trying to be better than my brothers, always trying to be stronger than my brothers, always trying to be faster than my brothers. It didn't matter if we were lifting weights and I weighed 80 pounds soaking wet, I was going to compete with them. And I think that in itself taught me a lot about work ethic and, you know, trying to be the hardest worker in the room, regardless of talent. I was always very small in stature. Compared to my teammates, a lot of them hit their growth spurts and were 5'8" by the time we were 12, and I was probably 5'2". And so thankfully to my genetics, I'm Polynesian and Hispanic, and I ended up growing into my body. I ended up getting a lot of muscle as I continued to grow. And fortunately enough, a lot of my power came in, and I wasn't 5'2" anymore. I'm 5'8" now, probably almost 200 pounds. And nobody probably would have ever bet that I would be a power hitter now. And so going back to my training, and, you know, my dad, he taught us very old school way. So we would wake up at 4:30 in the morning sometimes, and we'd go to the local high school and we'd run bleachers. 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, what is the purpose of this? And but anyways, I wanted to be as cool as my brothers, and I'd get up, we'd suit up and put our coats on, and we'd go to the high school and we'd run those bleachers until the sun came up. And then we had to keep running. We had to run the track. We had to do ladders. We had to do speed work. And you would think that I was a track athlete before a softball athlete. And like I said, the boys played football, I played softball, and so our sports were very different. But when I got into the softball field, I feel like those workouts of waking up at 4:30 in the morning, lifting weights in the garage with the boys, all made softball so much easier for me. And I'm so thankful that I had those old school teachings of training, because, you know, I wasn't hitting 24/7. I wasn't getting burnt out 24/7 just doing softball drills. I was working out football mechanics with the boys. And I feel like that helps me in softball, just my hand-eye coordination, my ability to probably catch balls. Honestly, I don't even know, but just being around different sport athletes with my brothers and having that competitive nature 24/7 allowed me to be a competitive athlete on the field with my teammates. And so when I think about my process and I think about all of those things, and I think about, you know, my dad, we weren't the most financially stable growing up. And so he did a lot of research as far as how was I meal planning. In junior high, I used to have packed lunches waiting for me every morning. I had a protein shake. My dad would give me dried cranberries, dark chocolate, almonds, all in my lunch. I'd have 2 sandwiches because, like I said, I was probably 80 pounds soaking wet. And that wasn't the ideal lunch for me in middle school. You know, all the cool kids had hot Cheetos and juice pouches, and here I am with a protein shake. And I remember being so embarrassed that I would drink my protein shake in the bathroom locker because I didn't want anybody to see, like, why is this girl drinking protein shakes in middle school? And, you know, now that I look back at it, I kind of kick myself in the butt, because I'm so thankful that I had a dad that was willing to help me achieve my dreams and help me be better without me even knowing it and without me being so appreciative of it at the time. And so he did nonstop research. I remember, and I think the coaches will probably think this is funny, but I was drinking fiber too, like Metamucil fiber in the mornings. And so I'm just so thankful that I had a dad that was willing to put in the time and the effort for me to develop into the athlete that I am today. And when I think about my travel ball team and my coach, Mike Stith and Mark Campbell, when I got into high school, I couldn't afford hitting lessons. And they knew that. They knew that what they were taking on with me as an athlete was something that was manageable for them, because they knew that I would always give 100%. They knew I was always going to work hard, and that they weren't just devoting this time to a girl that would take advantage of their time. And so for hitting lessons, I had come to an agreement with my coach, Mike Stith, that I would recycle bottles. And that's how I would pay for my lessons, because he knew that my parents just didn't have it, and that's what it was. And so I remember one time we went to the recycling bin, and I'm so shy. I still am to this day. I probably didn't say but 2 words to him in the car. I probably ended up falling asleep, honestly, too. And we went and we recycled that day and had hitting lessons the rest of the night. And about 2 to 3 times a week, my other coach, Mark Campbell, he would have catching lessons. And since I've been his catcher since I was 10 years old, all the way through my senior year of high school, I would go with him to catching lessons, and he'd have about 3 a day. And I'd do every single lesson for an hour and never had to pay for it, but I had to be the example. So I was always the ones teaching the girls, no matter their age, how to do the drills, what the form should look like. And, I was so young during that time that I was able to just every single hour, it didn't matter how many lessons there were, and I was going to compete with those girls. It didn't matter if it was my 3rd lesson of the day and I was exhausted. Mark knew that he was putting me in there to be the example, and I was never going to let him, have to kick me out of the cage or second guess why he was having me in there. I was always wanting to prove to my coaches that their time was worth everything. And so it didn't matter necessarily how much money we had in our pocket, but just the ability to work hard and put my head down and make their time, respect their time, was all that they could have asked for. And so, I think going into my process with Team USA, as a lot of us can relate, you may be the best one on your team, or you may not be the best one on your team. And for a lot of the time, I was just known as the hard worker. I wasn't necessarily the best at a young age, but my coaches, they would bring another catcher in. So I'm solely kind of just a catcher only, a CEO, as I like to say. And that's kind of just my specialty, is just catching. And so every single time I maybe got complacent at being a catcher, my coach would bring in another catcher, and she would fight for that position over me. And obviously, me being a little bit smaller and some of the girls being a lot bigger, they would start over me, and I'd have to get kicked to either the outfield or third base or something else. And I knew I wanted to be a catcher because I wasn't given it. I had to work for it. And I knew that I wanted something that I could say I earned. And so every time he brought in a catcher, I'd go home with my dad. It didn't matter if we had a 6-hour practice, we'd work some more. And I was determined to be a catcher. And so I'd beat one catcher out, he'd bring another one in. And it was a cycle. I kept having to work as hard as I could, do as many reps every single day as I could. And that, honestly, that process in itself taught me a lot, because as I went through college, I was able to earn a starting spot from my freshman year through my super senior year. And then when I got into Team USA, it was a whole different story. You go from being a starter in college to being now a bench player. And that played the most mental role on me in a negative way. And that's when I honestly hit a mental low, was when I went to Team USA. And it's so I don't want to get emotional, but it is a big part of my story, because a lot of the time, you're playing for Team USA. You can't be anything but grateful. You're representing your country. You're representing so much more than yourself. And you have this sadness on the other side, because you're not a starter. You're sitting the bench almost every single game. I saw the bullpen more times than I saw the field. And it was a whole different aspect for me, from the junior team, like I said, onto the Japan roster, onto the B team, to the Olympic team. And like I said, you have nothing but gratefulness in your heart, because you are representing your country. You are one of 15 to 18 girls that get this opportunity. And so I remember for a couple of months, I was a little bit sad. I was sad that my family would come and they'd watch me, and they'd be like, "Are you in the lineup? Are you playing today?" And most times they saw me more from the bullpen, like I said, than on the field. And after the game, I remember seeing my dad, and I'd be so crushed. And he was like, "You know what? You're still living the dream." And to this day, that's one of my favorite sayings, is that I'm living the dream. It doesn't matter, regardless if I'm starting or if I'm helping from the dugout. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is perspective, because I do get the chance to be one of 15. that are representing our country. I do get the chance to be an Olympian now. I do get the chance to be a Pan Am champion. I do get the chance to help my teammates also be their best selves. And I think it took a lot of maturing and a lot of growing up for me to have that perspective. It wasn't something that came easy. Like I said, I'm used to being somebody that started every single game. You know, I'd go to sleep the night before, like I'm in the lineup, I'm playing tomorrow, to, you know, I don't know if I'm in the lineup. I don't know where I'm going to be. I'm probably going to be in the bullpen, can't see the game. And there was a time during the Olympic year that a lot of the pitchers had come up to me. And I wasn't the starting catcher at the time. And, you know, that was a big year for us, the Olympic year. And I was able to call pitches really well. And I remember selfishly thinking, you know, this is the one thing that sets me apart from the other catchers, is I can really call for our pitchers. And me knowing I wasn't going to be the starter, I could have either been really selfish and withhold all of that knowledge that I had, or I could have given it to our starting catcher and allowed our team to win. Because if she won, then we won. It didn't matter if I was the one that was out there. If she had that knowledge that I had and we were able to win as a team, that's all that mattered to me. And so I had to put my pride to the side and know that it's not about me, it's about the team. And we're only as strong as the person that's out there that's actually contributing. If I'm not the one that's in the box, regardless if I'm in the lineup or not, I'm giving my all to that batter that's in the box. Or if I'm out on that field, I'll give 100% to what I'm doing on the field. We can't be selfish, though. This is a team sport for a reason. And so unselfishly, I gave that knowledge to the starting catcher, and we were able to advance all the way to the championship game in the Olympics. Unfortunately, we came up a little short and got the silver medal. But nonetheless, I think that taught me a big lesson in itself is, you know, it's not about you. It's never about you. And I think that's what I love so much about my story is there's been so many people that have poured into my cup for me to be successful and for me to navigate, you know, going to college and having hitting lessons when I wasn't able to afford it. And, you know, being the catcher that I am today and having those challenges hit me because it was all for another purpose. It was all for, you know, we all have our own stories. And I am a firm believer that everything's supposed to happen the way that it happens. And, anyways, well, now it's my turn to be a starting catcher on Team USA. And, you know, I think it's important that I had to go through being a bench player to a bullpen catcher to maybe the B string catcher and to now being the starting catcher. And I don't think I would have appreciated where I am now if I hadn't have gone through the journey to get here. And I think that speaks volumes, you know, for the rest of my career too, and everything that's happened is I wouldn't be able to appreciate it if I wasn't going through the roller coaster ride of the ups and downs. And Coach Candrea always says, you know, that's what softball is going to be. That's what life is going to be, is a roller coaster. You're going to have your highs and you're going to have your lows, but what you're in charge of is trying to get as constant as you can, trying to get whatever butterflies you may feel all going in the same circle, all going in the same direction, and controlling those and using those to your advantage. And, like I said earlier, I think I've just had really great teachers in my life to help me learn this perspective and to help me now share my story with, you know, athletes that it may resonate with, because not everybody has it easy and not everybody is given things easily. You know, some things have to be earned, but I think there's so much respect and there's so much gratitude in earning what you have, because you can say, I worked for that, and you can say, I gave it my all for that. And even if you come up short, I think that it's still worth trying for, because like anything in this life, nothing good comes easy. And so when you do get those things, and, you know, even in the Pan Am games, this past week, the last time I was with Team USA in Guatemala, I struck out almost every single at bat. And I didn't know if I was going to be asked back again to the team. And so I made it my personal mission that when I was invited back, that I was going to go as hard as I could at it. Because I wasn't going to have another outing or another result and that feeling that I left Guatemala with last year with this time. And so I ended up going 4 for 4 in one of my games with 4 home runs. And that honestly was an out of body experience for me, because it was more so my hard work had paid off. I could care less if it was 4 home runs or 4 singles, but I think that ability, you know, and that trust that I had in the rest of the lineup and the rest of my teammates, and that hard work that I put in every single day, hitting or visualizing, or that mental mindset that I had approaching the box. I wanted it to be different, and I made every single at bat count. It didn't matter if I hit 3 home runs in those 3 previous at bats. That 4th at bat, it was like I was 0-0. It was like I fresh slate, you know? And so I think that's what's special about the game of softball is we have to have such a quick reset button, and we have to be able to take the game one step at a time, one pitch at a time, one at bat at a time. And ultimately that's just what I've been doing since travel ball, is taking everything one step at a time, learning as I go through it, keeping my positive perspective. You know, there's always a positive to however you're seeing any situation, and always just trying to be the hardest worker in the room. That's probably the biggest thing is that I've taken from being a young athlete, is always being the hardest worker in the room. Even if you aren't the most talented, hard work will always pay off, and it will always reward you when it's your time. And so sorry if I've gone over the time, or if
No, I think
has
it's
questions,
awesome.
I'd love to keep talking and keep answering them.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's so many great things to be pulled from that. I love that perspective of, I think it's an underrated thing of the idea of being a good teammate. I think that's underrated in sports in general. So many people are out there looking for their, you know, glory and what they can do. And I want to win because it was me that won. But like
Yeah.
you said, like if one of us wins, we all win. If we all win, we all win, you know, like I think that's such a valuable perspective to have, that you can be an effective member of a team both as a star and as a supporting player. And you might go through different times when you're in different ends of the spectrum, but I think that's a really good perspective to keep.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got a few minutes left before we have to let Dejah get on with her evening, but if any of you that are on right now have any questions for her, anything that you want to ask her, you can either unmute and ask, or you can throw them in the chat. Ask her about what Chile was like. You can ask her about her Olympic experience, or, you know, professional or college, or
selfishly, Coach AB always wants to know, what is your top, you know, mental skill that you rely on in your game, either that you've learned or that you've kind of self-developed?
Well, it's kind of a little controversial. So I always grew up, like I said, around the boys. My dad always taught me to just be like a very hungry athlete. Like, just when I step onto the field, I have to be almost a different person. And so I think that was a trick that I learned, was like, I have almost an alter ego. Like, and so when I ask young athletes, like, who's your favorite role model? Who do you look up to? And when they say their name, I'm like, okay, every time you step onto the field, that's who you are. Even if it's like a cartoon character, like you're Superwoman. Every time you step onto the field, you're Superwoman. And so, me being a very shy athlete, I had to be somebody who was outgoing, somebody who was very talkative, because I was a catcher and I can't be a quiet catcher. And so every time I stepped onto the field, I wasn't Dejah, the soft-spoken little girl. I was Dejah, the confident leader that, you know, was able to speak to her team and lead her team and things like that. And so I think sometimes stepping onto the field, not maybe as your shy self, but somebody who maybe you want to embody, is something that I learned very fast. So that's something that I like to do. Or I do a lot of breathing. And so I know a lot of people speak about breathing and how important it is, but it's scientifically proven that breathing helps you. And so I'm a big breather. And when I can't breathe, I chew gum. And so chewing gum kind of just gives me, I can't multitask. Something to focus on is I'm chewing gum, trying to blow bubbles, pop my bubbles. So a lot of time during my at-bats, you'll see gum in my mouth, or just bubbles all around me. And so those are probably the 2 main things that I've learned mindset-wise that have helped me.
Well, I think one of the skills that we forget is it's the alter ego is an identity of you're choosing to act as if you're choosing that best version of yourself. That's absolutely a mental skill. So good.
I've never heard of that one. That seems like a fun one to try.
Yeah. Especially for young athletes, they love that.
Yeah. What were you as a kid? What was the What was the character that you took on?
So I didn't learn this until later, but I always just embody, it's more like characteristic. Like I am a vocal leader. I am a confident woman out there. Like I am this really strong athletic female that, that I envision myself as. And so one of my teammates, Danielle O'Toole, my dad, he has a travel ball team too. And one of the pictures was like, Danielle O'Toole is my favorite person ever. And I was like, okay, every time you step onto the mound, you are Danielle O'Toole. And I kid you not, the game after I told her that, she lights out. And so it really is a mental thing for them to correlate with.
Yeah. Olivia asked in the chat there, she must have logged in a little bit later. What college did you play for?
The University of Arizona in Tucson, the Wildcats, not the Sun Devils.
I'm sure you get lots of mix-ups between those two. And then Lexi's asking, growing up, did you look up to any softball players? Like, who did you look up to when you were growing up?
I looked up to Kehlani Ricketts very specifically because she is a Samoan softball player, and that resonated with me. But like I said, I wasn't very knowledgeable about softball early on. I had more male idols, which I hate to say nowadays because I'm all about female sports and helping promote female sports. And it doesn't matter what sport it is. If it's not softball, if it's a female athlete, I'm all for it. And so I really harp on young athletes nowadays to be knowledgeable about, female athletes that they look up to, because it is so important to have that at a young age and to see maybe somebody that looks like you or somebody that you resonate with, and that's your idol, and it doesn't have to always be a male professional athlete. And so Kehlani Ricketts was a huge one for me.
Yeah, we live in a great day now where it's so much easier, like you said, it's so much easier now. Female athletes are so much more visible and so much more accessible. I think it's awesome to have those.
What's your
Olivia? Go. Sorry, I just noticed you unmuted. Go for it.
What's your favorite part about catching?
I love to be very active in the game. I tried outfield out and I wasn't as involved. And I have to be focusing on something for me to be like locked in. And so catching for me, I became a catcher when I was 8 years old because I was not afraid to get hit with the ball. I was one of the only girls that wasn't afraid. And I thought I was so cool when I got my first pair of catcher's gear, and just being involved in every single play and always having a say nowadays, because I call pitches, in the outcome of the game. I think that's so special and so unique, and it makes you really focus and learn the game, because you're the one back there calling pitches. Yes, the pitcher throws it, but you are her helping hand in the success or the failure of the game. And I take so much pride in that and getting to know my pitchers, and I think it's so fun. It's a different part of the game that is overlooked. Are you a catcher? Let's go.
All right. Anybody else? Last chance. We promised Dejah half an hour, so we're right there. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Dejah. Thank you. This was awesome. This was so fun to hear your story. And I hope you guys really were taking notes there, because there was a lot of great wisdom in there teaching you about, for how to be successful, how to, despite any challenges or obstacles you might feel are in your way, like you can be successful regardless of where you come from or what your experiences are. So I think that was a great message for them tonight, Dejah. So thank you so much. If you want to unmute and say thank you to Dejah on your way out, we will go ahead and stop the recording. So